KK. Hey. KK. What's up, you guys? We're back in effect. Back in the building. Hello. You ready for it? Rendering.
Streams. Here comes the streams.
Ready for the universal greeting from the JNN, the Jamar Nicholas Network? Well, hello. What up, D Brad? D Brad says, yay.
My network has no greeting. The MCM has no greeting.
Oh, so we're going to jump right into it, Mike. Our good buddy, Notorious. JRD says, I like the orchestra. Thank you, JRD. Mike, feeling better? How you feeling, Mike?
Yep. 100% in the pink. 100% in the pink since last week. I was just down a couple days. I think, again, the delayed reaction to the booster.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like the previous 2 shots, about a month later, I just got like the whoop ass just came out for like 3 or 4 days. So, like, some people get it right away, but it seems like everybody has a very different. Some people have no reaction. So, I guess maybe it takes my body a time to build up, and then I get the slap.
Yeah. It's funny that some people really have reactions to the shots, and some people don't.
But they say it's good if you have a reaction.
Our good buddy Jerry Kraft, Jerry Kraft, Newbery Medal Award-winning Jerry Kraft says, "Mike, in the pink, that's good, right?"
Yeah, as far as I remember, in the pink was always a good thing. For multiple reasons.
Yo, we're live, bro. Good seeing you, Jerry. Thanks a lot. We got some more well wishes. JRD says, Kidlet says hi and also sends healing regards to Mike, too. Mike, those are like, Sim.
Chim Celebim.
Chim Sharu. Thank you, Kidlet. And hey, JRD, thank you. Welcome you guys back to the podcast. For some of you who forgot we existed, and how could you? You're watching the Pencil to Pencil podcast, brought to you. Hopefully, Mike, we can get back on our schedule every week, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. EST. Brought to you by the dynamic duo of myself, Jamar Nicholas, producer and cartoonist in good standing. You ready? I got some nicknames for you tonight, Mike. As always, Philadelphia's favorite son in the captain of the starship, Jean-Luc Picard. Engage.
Make it no.
Make it no.
You need to get your Geordie visor now. See? You're Geordie John. You're Geordie John.
Johnny LaForge. Johnny Quest. With the black turtleneck? No, all right.
And, Johnny, everything's John. It's John. We'll just sit here and just say John to everything.
I could do that. I could easily do that. And joined at the proverbial hip is my best bud and Master Chief of comic book illustration, Michael Manley. How you doing, Mike?
I am much recovered.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, some of you may or may not know, because Mike, you're pretty transparent on your socials. You let some people know you weren't feeling so hot, and we took a little respite. As everybody knows, Mike is always busy. Mike is always juggling 2 syndicated comic strips at the same time. I still don't know how you do it, brother. On top of whatever else is going on.
I sit right here. There's no secrets. I sit right here for hours and hours and hours.
You know what, Mike? I should get a neon sign on the back wall that says, I don't think I can afford this because it's a lot of letters. The only thing that matters is your ass in the chair. M. Manley. That's the only takeaway. If I had one takeaway, it would be that quote you said years ago. And is it not true?
Yeah. So, I mean, anybody who has to produce a consistent volume of work, the most important thing is sitting down in every day and working, because you have good days, you can have bad days, you know, you have days like I have many days where I'm like, yeah, you know, but and you kind of mix it all together, so it's not like if you just sat down where you're like, the muse is in the room, attack, you know, and
Yeah.
then in the afternoon you take a nap, and then like
Yeah, and that's one of the first things, we say to people in both of our creative endeavors beyond the podcast. Like, both of us have influence in different ways and come across contact with other, burgeoning artists and enthusiasts and whoever else is in the mix. And sometimes it comes up. It's just like, how do you stay motivated? How do you, and beyond it,
debt.
number. I was going to say deadlines, but yes, debt.
Right, debt and deadlines. You know?
That's a D&D I don't like to play.
Yeah, I don't have one of those magic refrigerators you have as a teenager where you open the door and like, oh, there's a brand new chicken in there. There's some new milk in there. There's a brand new, whatever,
Sunny D is
No.
in here right now.
Yeah, no Sunny. If I don't buy that Sunny D does not miraculously appear in my refrigerator.
Oh, that's fantastic. And
I know that sometimes sounds like old man grousing, but it's
right.
That's that thing you go through when you go from avocation to vocation. From I wish I had that job. Oh, I wish I could do this thing I love, to actually doing it.
Yeah.
And then having to do it when you
don't want to do it. Right.
Right. On top of the fact that you gotta pay for, if you don't do it, I can't go back and move in with my mom and daddy now.
Oh,
a little bit too old for that.
That's not going to work.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that really happened with our generation anyway, but
not well.
It's happens a lot now.
Yeah.
Now, of course, some people also have a partner that might foot part of the workload.
The life,
but a lot of cartoonists, have to sit down, especially if you have a syndicated strip, which is probably the most rigorous because you have to produce it so consistently. Like you could say, like, oh, I need an issue off of Spider-Man. You know what I mean? You could say, I need 2 issues off, but you can't. I can't say, well, I need 2 months off of Judge Parker. Go get somebody else. I need 2 months off the Phantom. Go get somebody else. And they don't do reprints, right?
No.
They don't like reprint stuff like they used to in the old days. He was like, oh, so and so's late. Hey, Pilgrim.
Yeah.
A story from yesteryear. We can't really.
It doesn't work like that way. Hey, let's do a shout out to our sponsors and open the show so I can get the stuff off the screen. You know it the way I know it. I'm loving this new camera with the pointy. I'm going to be annoying tonight. The John. You see the John above my head. Let's give a shout out to our sponsors. The guys at Graphics League, those sweet people that make your favorite cartooning software, Clip Studio Paint.
Wait a minute, that's John Studio Paint. Right?
I think you would call it the Clip Studio John. I think that's
okay. There you go.
Yeah,
John Studio John.
Are you ready? And our good buddy John Morrow. See, that's how it works. Over at Tomorrow's Publishing, who is our one of our best buds and also the publisher of Mike Manley's award-nominated magazine, Draw! Mike, what's up with Draw? We doing any issues this year, next year? What you got anything in the pipe?
I hope to have something later in the year. It's got sidelined and pushed back. I wanted to go to like doing sort of like an annual. That was the goal. But I need to refocus. A lot of can't really talk about it yet, but there's a lot of shifting chairs on deck right now, and things are going to probably switch up on some things next 2-3 months. So
I wonder what it could be.
It'll still involve me sitting in this chair
Nothing changed.
Nothing changes. Nothing changes there.
Uh,
So yeah, I'd like to do an annual. But I mean, I know a lot of people are struggling. A lot of publishers are struggling because it's still taking a long time to get stuff back from overseas.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and delivery schedules. And I just got a message the other day that FedEx was behind because so many of the people were sick.
Hmm.
You know, so
Yeah, everything's affected, and everyone's being affected in different ways. But still, it's still funny that the thirst, for lack of a better word, of the consumer doesn't change. They still want to know where it is. Yo, how come it's late? What do you mean? What do you mean it's on a boat at the bottom of the bay? What do you mean the boat didn't get here? You know what I'm saying? And the supply and demand is real.
you know
Um,
what we don't hear about now
hmm.
that we were like right before Christmas. This shows you how the media works too. Supply chain, supply chain, supply chain, supply chain. Everybody
Everything was
supply.
supply
You
chain.
don't
You're
hear
right.
you don't
Yeah.
hear anything about the supply chain now. As
Hmm.
soon as like it's just like Christmas night in the me take Santa and they throw his ass out back and then they bring in all the Valentine stuff. So like the next day it's like that whole aisle that had all the Christmas thing is now all full of hearts, right?
Hmm.
It's the
Hmm.
same thing. It's like supply chain, supply chain. What are we gonna do? Oh my god, it's not gonna be Christmas. And then Christmas Day, doink.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy, right? I mean, if you hit the Walgreens hard right after Halloween, you get there's mad stuff in the clearance aisle. Like it was $20 yesterday, but now it's 436. I just made that
Yep.
number up. You know.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. I mean, they got all those like bad witch decorations and like all kinds of like cups with like Frankenstein's head or something.
yeah, that was
Got to
that
get
was
rid of it.
that almost reminds me a little bit, Mike, like uh, at the beginning of a comic book convention, like say as an exhibitor, sometimes you would get there like a day early. I've never done day early setup, as I know a lot of people that do. They come in the day before the show and set their whole thing up and make sure it's good, and then they leave and they're all excited, and then the weekend goes by. Then Sunday, it's just garbage everywhere. Like Sunday at 7 o'clock when the show's over, and the Teamsters are in the bay with the forklift and ripping the rug up.
We're ripping up. Yeah.
All of a sudden, none of that stuff is important anymore. You know what I mean? And I can kind of understand the same thing there. That's always funny to me. All right, guys, I want to give you some rules of engagement for this evening. So we've been away for a little bit, and Mike and I don't have a guest. We're not doing a boot camp. We're just doing, as we used to
You're my
call it.
guest.
Oh,
You're my guest.
oh, you're so sweet. Well, we used to call this in the beginning of our podcast life here on the socials a palate cleanser. In between our guests, we would take an episode and and just like I've said this before, back when you would go to the candle store, you get dragged to the candle store by your spouse or whatever. Smell this, smell this, smell this, and then they
Well,
would
I'm
have
glad I'm not married. If I had to get dragged into the candle
it's a
store and
it,
smell,
it's a
you
Yankee
know,
candle, and
Yankee Candle, leave your leave my soul in Yankee Candle.
but they would have on the shelves, Mike, little containers of coffee beans. And what you would do is you would smell the coffee beans, and it would, as they say, reset your sniffer. So after having all these things, you would basically recalibrate, and that's what a show like this is for. So Mike and I are just going to catch up. I have a couple little things to we have a couple little programming things to do, but really this is your episode, you guys. So if you've ever had points on the show where you really want to ask Mike a question, because it happens almost every show and I can't really fit them in, this is a perfect time. Ask Mike about his storied career in comics, or what he's working on now, or Dark Hawk, or whatever you want to ask him. Remember, I'm a cartoonist too. If you may have forgotten that, ask me a question, and
What?
I know, right? And we're just gonna riff, see how this goes. We'll put in close to an hour. We'll see how the energy goes. If we're rocking, we'll keep it going. If you guys are whack, we'll cut the rope.
If you whack, we won't come back.
That's right. You go. Attack the whack. Attack the whack. Yo, Marshall, what's up? It's good to see you. I see Matt Waringo's in the building. What's going on? A lot of our penciliers are saddled up and tied off their horses outside. So rock out with us. So I'm totally in riff mode. So Mike, we just went through the holidays, right? So,
Yes.
deep bread, that's a good question. I'll get to that. And not necessarily that because we're getting old and we're not really the gift receiving type at this point, right? You just kind of like if the day goes by, oh, somebody gives you something, maybe a candle, Mike Manley. But I think a lot of cartoonist gifts, and maybe we can talk about this. This is kind of like a precursor to coffee break. How many of you guys out there, especially our creative cartoonist, artist, illustrator buddies out there, always strike out when you ask people to get you stuff? They just don't know what to do with you. You're so hard to shop for, right? I know, I could rattle off 1,000 things quickly about what another cartoonist would want. So you usually wind up buying your own stuff, right? So I figured we'd do a little kind of like around the holidays show and tell. I asked Mike before we went live if he had anything he felt like sharing, any new books you picked up. EJB, what up, EJB? A patchouli candle episode, you know it. What's up? Oh, what's up, Kajat? Young Kajizzle in the building. Thanks for joining us tonight. Ask some questions. So, Mike, do you want to do a little show and tell? We could go back and forth. You do one, I'll do one.
Sure. See, I'm always buying books, so
Yeah.
I just got this in.
Oh, you got the Friday Foster. Hold on, let me give you the screen. You need the whole screen for that. Hold on a second. We're a little jumpy here. All right, go ahead, Mike.
So I got this today, where they reprinted the Sundays. I think they're doing the dailies too. I think they might be available in Europe and not here yet, but they did them in English. So very nice. Jim, well, it's written by Jim Lawrence, the guy who used to write like Modesty Blaze, and then it's drawn by Jordi Longaron, who is a Spaniard. And then it just talks. It's a great book. It shows a lot of behind the scenes stuff.
Well, look at that.
A series of paperbacks. There was a film.
Yeah,
I was sort of because they had to agree with the ass.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't know that was a comic strip first.
Yeah, it started out as a comic strip, and it didn't run that long. I mean, there was a lot of strips like that would run like 3, 4, 5 years. But I've been waiting for this to come out because it's hard to find a collection of this material. And I would hunt for the stuff online. Amazon had the box came and looked like a bear had attacked it.
Yeah, it was crazy.
And yeah, and what is it? Is $40. So
that's a gorgeous book.
Cheaper on Amazon. So that's one of my Christmas gifts to myself.
All right, that's nice. Everybody's bugging out because you said Pam Grier in the chat. I'll go. So
okay,
I haven't even opened this yet, but I picked this up. I was on the Kickstarter campaign for this. This came in the mail. The Excellence trade by our boy Kari Randolph.
Okay, cool.
Look at that, man! It's beautiful with the gilded Johns. Look at that. I'm gonna break the seal right here on the podcast.
Is that like unboxing videos? They have breaking the seal videos.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to mess it up. There's going to be somebody in chat going, no. There's a guy I watch on YouTube. Let me try to clean this up before it sounds creepy. I just watch a guy on YouTube. I think the name of his channel is Jim Mint 10 Collectibles, and he's just a book collector. Like he gets a lot of trades and graphic novels and like omnibuses. Omnibuy? What's the plural of omnibuses? And he talks about how to open a book for the first time without cracking the spine. It's really interesting. So this is a fantastic, I didn't get the floppies when Kari was doing this in the first run. But I had to back the Kickstarter. I even got a poster. I wonder if he signed it. Excellence is real. This looks great. I can't wait to get into it. But that was one of the things I picked up. And
how much was that? How much was the Kickstarter?
Well, this book on the thing it says it's $50. I might have done an early bird, so I may have gotten it a little cheaper than that. I'm not exactly. I don't remember, but I think it's out in the world now. But I had to just make sure that got made. So, what up, Shannon? Shannon says Jim Mint Collectibles, Uncanny Omar. See, he's got his fans out there. That's great. Oh, and Paul Pate just put, I think that's the URL for the Friday Foster book, Mike. I think that's what.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just went to Amazon to get it because sometimes you get a break.
Oh no, hold on. Oh no, Paul was sharing what he got for Christmas, so he just shared that in the chat. Sorry, but yeah, I think all that's out in the world, so you can go pick that up. All right, Mike, what's next? It's your turn.
I got the book on Steve Holland, who was the world's greatest illustration model. So he's the guy that modeled. Most people would know him for the Doc Savage, James Bama. Let's see if I can find that in here. But anyway, he was this guy. Okay, so like here's one of the photos.
Oh, okay.
Modeling for Doc Savage. And this guy was probably, without a doubt, 10 times 10 over 10, the model that everybody used.
Wow.
If you go into if you would go like I would and look at old paperback covers, you would see like this guy, and you go like, you would recognize his face. In fact,
but not know where, right?
Right. I remember those old Magnus Robot Fighter comics from the 60s.
Yo, that's him, right?
That's him, right. And you could always tell because he had a very distinctive face.
Mm-hmm.
Just tons of,
wow.
There's one that I posted on my Facebook a while ago where there's like 3 good guys and 3 bad guys, and he's like every single guy.
He's all the guys.
He's all the guys. Many guys like Bob Larkin, who used to do a lot of Marvel comics, used him for like the Hulk or for like Conan. I mean, a very distinctive face.
So is the chapters broken down by illustrators who used his likeness? Is that how that works?
Right. Yeah, there's talks, but so here's like one of the Bama.
Oh wow.
And then you could see the photos that Bama took himself. Right. Bama took these photos himself. And then there's the painting. And sometimes you can see the photo next to the illustration. Back when illustration was the big thing, these guys would have photographers come in, professional photographers, professional models. Sometimes they'd have 2 or 3 different models.
Yeah.
I got 2, 3 different guys, 2 or 3 different gals, but like this guy was like the guy.
Yeah.
Everybody used him. So it's a really cool book because you get to see like all these behind the scene photos of him, and then they interview each artist, and they interview his daughter, and you get a little bit of a backstory on the guy who sounds like you would think he would be more interesting, but he sounds like it's like this is what I did for a living. You know what I mean?
Like
You
he's got
know,
a Newport in his hand. Yeah. So
yeah, yeah. I remember Tom Palmer, the Marvel Comics artist Tom Palmer,
yeah.
used him and told me that he worked with him.
Mm.
So that was very interesting. But yeah, I remember as a kid, I would see that face and would go, that looks like the same guy. And you would see him like on Magnus Robot Fighter or,
Mhm.
the Avenger or Doc Savage or Conan or whatever. You
Yeah.
would see that guy's face all the time. If you would just go into an old used bookstore, which I used to go to all the time, and you just start looking at like cool paperback covers because you're like, oh, who is this artist? Oh,
Mhm.
I found a
Mhm.
lot of artists that way, like John Berkey and people like that, who are I would see and I would go, okay, who is that artist? That looks familiar, And then you would see another cover. Oh, it looks like it's the same guy. And this was in the 70s, early 80s. There was no internet, so there was no like database. You know what I
Right.
mean? And sometimes you would open up the book.
Repositories. Right. Yeah.
Right. And you would open up the book, and sometimes, like Frazetta, you knew.
Mhm.
Boris, you knew.
Mhm.
Sometimes you would see somebody and would go, well, who is that? That looks like that other artist. Sometimes you could see the signature. Sometimes you couldn't see the signature. So it was sort of like a treasure hunt.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fantastic. And just to belabor that for a little bit, I was talking to Mike Hawthorne this morning, and I was talking about the old school cartoonist studio. Like I talked about Kniff, like he was the first person that always pops in my mind when you talk about magnificent artist studios. And there's like classic pictures of Kniff in the studio, kind of like this with a pipe in his hand, in this giant space with giant windows and books with the rolling ladder in the background. And then there's a live model, like a lady is standing on the desk posing for him, and it's just
Which
like,
never happened in real life. They would take a picture. Model wouldn't come in and go like, okay, Milt, I'm ready.
I'm ready for my
Both of
close up,
those,
Mr. Kniff.
But you have to remember that a guy like Milton Caniff in the 1930s and 1940s was making the equivalent of several $1,000,000 a year. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the cartoonists back then, if you were a top cartoonist, you were as popular as any celebrity in the United States, any movie star. Those guys got endorsements. I mean, if you made $50,000 in 1940, that was like,
Mm-hmm.
whoa. There's a
Right.
great book I did before called Cartoon County, which was done by John Cullen Murphy's son.
Mm-hmm.
John Cullen Murphy is the guy who used to do Big Ben Bolt as strip, but he also took over Prince Valiant when Hal Foster retired.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great book because it describes this part of Connecticut where basically all the illustrators and all the cartoonists all lived. And I remember there was a chapter in there where he discussed what his father made in like 1961 doing Big Ben Bolt. And I think he made like $25,000, which would have been the equivalent of $250,000.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
guys like Charles Schultz
yeah.
made like $40 million a year for like decades, right?
That's
So
crazy.
yeah,
And yeah, then we talked a little bit about Mike, you and I, about a lot of those Connecticut cartoonists. They all had like golf carts and would drive across their expanse to other people's houses and like smoke cigars and shit. I think we got to bring that back. That's gonna be our thing.
Well, those guys were they were living Tony lifestyles of the Madison Avenue people, advertising people.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were a top illustrator or a top ad man, you made really good money, and those people all lived in those communities at Long Island and in Connecticut where you could drive into the city, take the train into the city. And those were, kind of the era of Madman,
Yeah.
Mad Men. Those guys made big dollars. You can't really do that in comic strips anymore. You can make an okay living, but you can't make anywhere near what you made in the previous decades. There's not enough newspaper circulation.
Yeah. There was definitely a golden age of cartooning. And I think a lot of people would think, Mike, it was the 90s image era, like the 86 to 95 or something was a golden era of comics. But I don't know. I think back
or
then,
just a little bit, even a little bit before, because I came across some of my old royalty statements. Let me see. I might be able to find it. Hold
on. Make sure you put your finger over all the important. Redact that. Oh, and while Mike's looking, guys, Mike and I are just kicking it tonight. So if you have any questions for us, feel free to ask. Nothing's off limits. Hey, Sergeant Dill, nice to see you. That's a great question. I'll ask that. Hang around for the answer. Mike, did you find anything?
Okay, now you're going to see a little bit of history here.
Did you redact that? Hold on, let me clear the screen. Oh, wait, what's that?
This is an old royalty statement. All right, so this shows you how much money I made 1 month in 1991 between Dark Hawk and Deathlock, right? And Dark Hawk was kind of considered to be like a shit book back then. Not like Spider-Man or Wolverine or whatever. So I made $12,000 in royalties 1 month.
Wow, Mike, that's crazy.
So that was Deathlock 1 sold 500,000 copies.
You'd be on the New York Times list now with those numbers.
All right, and Dark Hawk 5 sold 188,000. That outsells any book. Any book. They would kill to have numbers like that now.
What was the threshold? Wasn't there a cutoff threshold? Like if the book made under 80,000, they would cancel it or something.
I think
what was it?
When I started at Marvel, it was 75,000. They would cancel the book. You got Marvel. I'm sure is printing book that sells like what 5,000, 10,000, 8,000. I hear these really low numbers, but
yeah.
So you would make more money on a decent selling book than you actually on royalties than you would make for drawing. You'd make more than your page rate. But of course, those days are
long gone.
1991. So that's 30 years ago.
I'm bugging. Yeah. What's up, Joe? Big Joe says, I remember the circulation statements in the books every year. Yeah, that was like for real numbers. And just like I said, if there was a book making, I don't know, if there was an image book that was doing 80,000 units or something like that, people would be jumping out their shoes and socks.
Well, now today, yeah, if you were selling 80,000 copies of anything, that would be a smash hit now. When you got to 100,000, people were like, this book's going down.
It's getting wiggly now. Like, I don't know.
This book is going down. And they would do something like, well, we need to have Todd McFarlane draw the cover because, they would do that thing where they think, well, what we'll do is we'll get whoever's hot to draw the cover because the retailer look at the cover and go, oh, they got Todd McFarlane to draw it. I got to order that, And that never really worked. It's just like the multiple variant covers now. I mean,
Yeah,
you have to sell so many as a retailer to be able to get your copies.
yeah.
Somehow that whole thing still running. I don't really understand it,
They
but
still try it.
you know,
All
I'm
right,
I'm well out of there. So.
all right. It's my turn for show and tell. We're not finished. This Secret Santa continues. So
Uh-oh.
I rarely do eBay, but something just kind of caught my eye. I've been on a Dave Lapham kick lately. And for you guys who don't know who Dave Lapham is, Dave Lapham is a cartoonist.
Plasm.
He did Plasm, didn't he? Work on Plasm.
Warriors of Plasm.
I'm a giant Stray Bullets fan, and if you've never read Stray Bullets, it's a great crime comic. You should go cop it. Um, I found he did the series that I totally missed, and I got the whole thing off of eBay, Mike. This is Young Liars. I think there's 18 issues. It's all right here. So I wanted to check this out.
You
Uh,
bought you bought a run.
yeah, I bought a run. So also, what's interesting about stuff like this is I'm in this weird place with comics. Like I don't have any more space, and I think I'd be into just like buying a
Yet you
run of something.
continue to buy. You continue to buy.
I can't help it. But this looks pretty cool. I don't know what it's about yet, but I'm sure if it's Lapham approved, it's got a lot of crime and sex and
So,
guns in
Cosmo, no more room for kibble.
it.
Daddy's got to put his books over here.
So, and also, I like there was a series that Lapham did. He took a break from Straight Bullets. This is years ago, and did this series called Murder Me Dead, which was kind of like a mini series he made for himself, and then went back to Straight Bullets. Then I think he started doing Batman not too late after that. So that's my next scoop. You got anything else you want to tag in? You want to do
Oh,
another
yeah,
one?
yeah.
We'll do like one more round, and then we'll wrap it up.
Oh, nice.
Well, there's some questions in the room, but I don't want to not get to them.
Oh, they can ask a question while I get my deliciousness out.
All right. High school buddy and magnificent filmmaker Shannon Newby asks, "What's up, Shannon?" And I'll give a plug. Shannon is now in the comic book publishing game. Check out Snooby Comics for Shannon Newby's comic book periodicals. Aside from like Batman or Spider Man, what is the average quantity sold for a title monthly? And Shannon, I believe, is asking about modern numbers. Mike, you got an idea about that?
No, there used to be, was it Brian Hibbs, or there was some IVC2, some kind of website or whatever that used to publish the numbers
Mm-hmm.
every month. But the last time I saw numbers, I mean, things were, the majority of comic books sold under 50, and there was a lot that sold under 30.
Mm.
So that was going back probably 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what pays everybody is they publish the floppies as loss leaders, hoping not to lose that much, put out the trade, and then that's when they start getting their profit. I think that's sort of like the image model, and that's a lot of people's models.
Mm-hmm.
They can't be making that much money because they're not paying people fantastic rates. I hear all these rates where people have been in the business a long time are getting their rates slashed. They're working with new people, working with people overseas, cut their page rate. And a lot of people are, I mean, there are people who would draw Spider-Man for free every month, right? Because they just love the character. They would love the job enough. But I don't think the direct market, maybe it's holding because of the reprints and things like that. I think graphic novels are still doing pretty good. I don't know how this is all being affected by the pandemic. You know,
Mm-hmm.
what I would say is that the growth seems to be in the web comics. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's like a bajillion young people doing web comics. So whether they take that then and turn and reprint those and put those out as I think just Space Boy just had a bunch of reprints come out. So I think Webtoons does have a deal for some people where they take it and they repackage it, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sort of interested to hear, and I haven't seen anything on, is DC did that Batman like Webtoon.
Oh, is that a
And
thing?
so, yeah, they did like a Batman comic on Webtoon. So I'm wondering how well that did, if it's still running. I've been so busy doing all this other stuff. I haven't checked into that, but I remember when they launched it last year.
Uh, Mike, our resident green visor, J. Robert Deans, who crunches numbers and keeps the spreadsheets, says at last check there are only some 3 to 4,000 shops in the U.S. That sounds about right. So the average selling title is around 20,000 units, but that was a few years ago before Marvel and DC went variant happy again. Thank you, JRD. Yeah, those numbers are low, right? But I mean, in modern times, that sounds high. But from the Manley era, back when they were, printing money over at Marvel and DC, all of these books would never see daylight with numbers like that. That
What
they
I
that
always
they
find
do now.
amazing is that you have a book that sells 20,000 copies. Everybody, for the most part, is making the same amount of money that they were making in the mid 90s, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
My rate when I did the Dark Hawk thing was the same rate I got last time I drew something Marvel. And the books cost more to produce, and the books are also more expensive because, like, a Batman comic's like what, $4 or something like that.
I
It's
think
pretty
it's
expensive.
close to $5 for a regular
Yeah,
floppy now. Yeah.
yeah. So Darkhawk was what, a $1.25 or $1.50 or something. I mean, this stuff is pretty
Wait, I thought
affordable.
what was it Dark Hawk? I thought you guys were doing 75-cent books, but no, that was later. You were
I
probably like
don't
a
remember. Yeah,
dollar
I don't remember.
25. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't remember now. I'd have to go back
that's
and
all right. I think that's interesting though.
but I got another
Yeah, let's
thing. I
see
got
it.
this.
Oh, dude, I haven't seen it yet. I heard that was hot though.
I really enjoyed it. The great thing about this is somehow Amazon screwed up and had this whole art of book on sale for $7.
Yeah, well, this is this still there?
And now I think it retails for 40 and 50 in Canada. So I got this for $7.
Wow, that's a
So
come up.
now usually these art of books tend to go out of print pretty quick.
Yeah,
So my advice is when you see like the art of Spider-Man or whatever, buy it right away. Because
just get it.
if you wait, then you
Yeah,
can't get it. The art
I.
of Klaus looked at that. There was a
Mhm.
whole bunch of stuff that comes out because they usually don't make that many copies of the original print run. So,
Mhm. Yeah, that Art of Spider Verse book, like I waited
right,
and then I got it later, but I was out for a while. I think they did another printing.
right. So this is I really like this film. I wasn't expecting that I would like it, but again, like all books, it's like the pre-production art, you know, uh, character design. Um, you realize how much work
Oh
they put
wow, look at
into
that.
these books that
Hmm.
you never actually see any of
Yeah,
this. A lot of the stuff you don't see
never makes it to screen.
on camera, right?
Yeah,
What's
yeah.
interesting is that usually what happens is once the book comes out, right? Once a movie comes out, then you start seeing a lot of the artists post
Hmm.
stuff on their Instagram.
Yeah, because a lot of that's under NDA or what have you
Right.
until it's
Yeah.
done, and then they're like, "All right, we don't
Yeah.
care anymore."
Yeah. But what
And
was interesting about this too was that they combined the 3D with line art. So it
mm,
had sort of a a line art going on top of it. So I liked the movie. I recommended the art book. $7, you can't beat that.
JRD says they very seldom do second printings of those art books. Spider Verse is one of the rare second printing. Yeah, and I think that's what I got. I got a copy later for Christmas the year after Spider Verse came out. Um, yeah, and there's some. I remember I had, well, one of my best buds, Chris Dresden, always cops art books, and almost like if it's animated, if it's something that's just hot, got to get the art book. And I think that's a cool thing to collect. Like the Lilo and Stitch uh, art of book is fantastic, full of these marvelous watercolors. It's just good stuff. Um,
Especially Disney. There was a Disney book on layout that came out a couple of years ago.
yeah,
And I bought that, and it went out a print, and that thing's worth like $1,000 now. I mean, it's just like you
yeah, it
can't
just
even
went
find
up.
it. Yeah. So, like I said, you buy the books when they come out. I think that the art books are the best investment for artists. Besides
Mm.
having a good chair,
Oh yes,
and a good
please get a
line,
good chair. Yeah.
good chair, art books. I learned that's how being an autodidact. That's how I learned. You know,
Mhm.
that's how I taught myself. I didn't go to school until I was 45, long after
Yeah.
I'd been working in comics and animation. So one of the ways I learned was from books.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a real thing. Our good buddy Big Joe says the old art books would be nice, just not publishing them as much anymore. And there's sometimes you go back in the vault, some wallet vampires like is it Stuart Ing books and Bud Plant and those type of
Stewart has
cattle.
everything. Yeah, he has everything.
Yo, don't. If you can't do it, don't go in there, bro. Like I used to get them. I don't get them anymore. The Bud Plant catalogs, they don't really make those anymore. Maybe they're online.
I don't know. I haven't gotten one in a long time. When I was in California a couple of years ago, I went to Stewart. And as soon as I walked in, my bank account was like, no,
Yo, did the
no.
bank call you, Mr. Manley? We're seeing some fraud activity on your account.
Right.
You're
Ching,
like,
ching, ching,
no,
ching, 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 ching,
I'm
ching.
just copping all these
Mhm.
books.
It's
Jared,
actually a little overwhelming because when you go into a place like that, you go, okay, if you go in with a list,
yeah,
but then you start browsing and you're browsing and you're browsing and you're browsing. And after a while, it's almost like your brain can't
yeah,
browse anymore because you've seen so many things, It's like, oh,
yeah.
do I want to get the French stuff or do I want to get all these art of books that he goes around and he collects all these books by these artists, all the sketchbooks and stuff. And then there's all the old out of print books and all the
Hmm.
famous artist books. And I mean, it's just a great, great store. And again, I never regret buying an art book.
I like that. That's a good. I started looking at, and I haven't bought anything from it, but Taschen books. I have a couple of. I know Crumb's out of favor now. I think they tried to cancel him, but I have a couple of Crumb books from Taschen, and
You can't cancel Crumb. It's either you like him or you don't, but you can't cancel dudes like that. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Uncancelable.
I love it. That's funny. Okay, so I'm going next, and then I'm going to answer a question. So let me get the question first before it disappears, because the scroll eats some of the comments if it goes too long. Where is it, Deep Red? Deep Red asked me a question, but now I can't find it. Oh, I'll do this one. Jerry Kraft says, "Hey guys, how do you guys store your comics?" Mike, how do you store your comic books?
In a box on the floor.
Boom, boom, right?
I mean, I have comics in the attic that are some are bagged and boarded. I mean, I'm not precious with them in that way. I mean, if I buy a nice old Toth comic that I spend $50, Yes, I put it in the bag or whatever. But in general, I'm not that precious with the stuff. Like they only have to exist for me because I'm reading them and enjoying them. Like
Yeah.
I know some people are like, white gloves and air
Hmm.
conditioning, environmental control. I've never been like that,
Yeah.
I'm not a I'm a collector of artists, not a collector of comics, right?
Uh-huh.
Like I don't have issues of Spider-Man. I don't have a lot of issues of Spider-Man that I didn't like the art, right?
Hmm.
Like if I didn't
Right.
like the
Right.
art, I wouldn't buy it. Like, but there are a lot of people that would like they just like Spider-Man, so they would just keep buying Spider-Man, and even though like, oh, this isn't very good, I don't like it, they would just keep because they want to have like every. I've always, I mean, I don't buy for writers. I buy for artists. I just buy for art. You know what I mean? And it can be in crappy condition, but if I can look at it, so yeah, I don't bag and board. I did
Hmm.
start sleeving my original comic art collection.
Oh well,
I
that's
did
that's.
start doing that, you
Hmm.
know,
So like your
because
original
especially
pages, you have them in Mylar. Yeah.
I started going through and doing that from my collection, not my
Hmm.
stuff, but my collection. Because one of the things is that anything from the mid '80s, they started pasting on the word balloons, and then they all, they all
Yeah.
roll off.
And I'm sure you find them like at the bottom of your portfolio case, like, oh, that's where
And then I
that
go,
went.
well, right, and then I have a lot of pages where the balloons have all come off.
Hmm.
Like for a lot of my stuff I did for Valiant, they all came. I don't know what they were using.
It was
It
like bad
terrible production.
adhesive or something. Yeah.
They were just, DC always had the best production. Marvel usually had pretty shitty production, and some of the other people had even worse production. I mean, the amount of rubber cement they would put down to put down a balloon, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
They would slather it all over the art, so then you would get those brown stains for
Yeah.
the rubber cement on the art. Um, and I see some jobs where just like, who, what monkey did they give this thing to? It's just like, it's just so horribly done.
Hmm.
It's just whoever's in the bullpen. Hey, you got a thumb? Come over here.
Mike, let me ask you a collectible question because I know from some of the old ways that you guys would kind of break up a job, so to speak, after it was done. Like, so say you were working on a book and you had an inker, that you guys would get the book back, and then you would split the pages up between the two of you, right? You get odds, they get evens, or however you guys make that work. Um, do you find that when people come to your table that they want artwork that may have the word balloon still attached, or are they more interested in making sure the characters are
I don't
visible?
know if people have ever professed a a preference. I will say the one thing that people profess a preference for is inking on the original pencils as opposed to inking over blue lines.
Hmm. Yeah, I just
Right?
heard something about like blue lines are making the rounds again.
Right. So, um, in general, the way it was in Marvel and DC was you got the first, if you did 3 issues in a row, the first 2 issues, you got the first part of the book and the inker got the last 7 or 8 pages. Then on the third book, the inker would get the first 7 or 8 pages, and then you would go back to the other thing. Some guys worked out deals where it's like, I get this, you get that, you know, that if
Mhm.
you wanted to do that on your own. But in general, at Marvel, I remember was you got the first 2/3, and then they got like the last 7 or 8 pages on 2 issues in a row, and then they would flop it. The same with same with covers. So if you
Mhm.
did 10 covers, right, the penciler would get the first two, the inker would get the third, the penciler would get 5 or 6, the inker would get 7, and then the penciler would get. You would just keep doing that again. Some people will work out different deals,
Yeah.
But
And what my question to that was that ever mandated by the editorial, or you guys just figured that out over a couple of sandwiches?
that's just what they did.
You just figured
That's
it
just,
out.
that's just what editorial did.
Oh, editorial split it up like that.
That was just the policy.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, Jerry has a asterisk. Jerry says, I mean, space-wise, I have mine in a file cabinet, which is cool, but I've seen special boxes that some collectors use.
I just have some long boxes and short boxes.
Yeah, nothing special.
I mean, actually, one of the things I need to do is go through my collection and probably get rid of half of it. I probably need to just pitch half of it, keep the stuff I really like. And then, there's a lot of stuff that I bought, and I started buying comics when I was like 13. So there's a lot of stuff that, am I going to really go back and ever look at that? Probably not.
Mike, our buddy Marshall, what up, Marshall? Marshall said, what was the name of the book that Mike had, the $7 one? Oh, you didn't say the title. That's the Something in the Machines art book, right?
Mitchell and the Machines, the art of Mitchell's and the Machines.
That's a Netflix movie.
Right.
And weren't we both, I think either one of us was trying to get the character designer on the show. I don't know what happened with that.
They didn't come on the show.
Yeah.
They refused. They refused to come on the show.
Yeah, that was another, we got ghosted on that one, but we try to bring you to good stuff.
We get ghosted a lot. I would say that probably 75% of the people I ask just never respond. Some people don't. And actually, more female artists don't respond than male artists. Male artists usually go yes or no, but usually the female artists, it's really hard to get a hold of them, to get them to respond at all.
I don't know. Well, we'll have to, maybe I'll have to change my deodorant. How's that sound?
I think a lot of what I notice that is because there's probably so much toxicity.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the female artists don't take any message. They don't answer any. They don't answer any messages.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like maybe if you get their email or something, and you write, they have a website, and you write their email, maybe they respond, or maybe they don't. I don't know. Just some people just. He's just like.
I was looking for. I had a question for me, and I keep losing it. I'll go to this one, and then I'll show my next book. All right, Sergeant Dill reported for duty. Thanks for joining us, Sergeant Dill. And if you guys are watching us on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop kick the bell so you get alerted when we're posting a new show. Sergeant Dill says, for what you both know now, if you were to restart and start all over again, what would you do different, Mike Manley? Do you have an answer for that? It
is really so completely different that it's
right.
almost hard. It's almost really, it's really impossible to ask that question, answer that question, because the industry was smaller. The path was clearer.
Mm-hmm.
As far as what you had to do in order to be able to get work, which was basically to get good enough and to be able to get somebody to see your work and to take the chance. Mm-hmm. And that just completely doesn't exist now. I mean, we talk about this all the time, but, for instance, you would go to a convention and there would be an older guy, like maybe Archie or some guy from DC or whatever, right? Or some guy from Marvel. And you, like Carl Potts or somebody, and you would show them your work, and they would go, oh. Like the first time I went to Marvel, right? The first time I went to Marvel, I actually got a job but I couldn't stay in New York City, so I couldn't do it.
Mhm.
But it was a comic from one of the that went inside of a toy. But yeah, so you would go up, you would show your work, and then some guy like John Verporten or whoever was in the thing would go, oh, "Okay, kid, oh, you do this," and then you would draw it and you'd bring it back, and they'd look at it, and they may give you a critique, and well, and then you would get another little, you'd sniff around, maybe you get another little job. That just first of all, you're not going to Marvel, you're not going to DC, you're not going to Image, you're not going to any big publisher, you're not going in their office, and you're not taking your work, and you're not showing it. Right now,
Right.
they have a talent liaison,
Yeah.
right? Who supposedly, everybody who's doing their horrible drawings of Spider-Man is flooding them every day, I'm sure, with with their stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I might not even work for Marvel and DC now because you could do your own Kickstarter, or you could do your webtoon, or you could do, when I was 15, I couldn't do a webtoon. But if
Mhm.
I was 15 now, I could do a webtoon. So it's
Mm.
really kind of hard to imagine what I would do at 15 would be like a magical wizard came
Yeah.
and gave you, it is really hard to answer that. I will say the one thing that's consistent, no matter what the time is, you have to have the right kind of personality for this. If you do not have the right kind of personality for this, doesn't matter what epoch you're in, you'll never be successful. You have to love to sit down and draw and tell a story more than anything else because it
Mhm.
requires a lot of time. No matter what, it requires a lot of time sitting down, being creative when you're not passionate, right? Because they all have the passionate part, like, oh, I want to do it, I want to do it, I want to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, I've been drawing like 5 hours now. When in the past, I'd usually get up and go like play video games or go outside and ride my skateboard or whatever else,
Mhm.
right? So you really have to have. I was just talking to somebody the other day on a thread. You really have to have the right kind of personality to be a successful cartoonist. More
Would you?
than talent,
Mhm.
more than anything else, because the other stuff comes out. Well, you can be really talented, right? Phenomenally talented, but you're a screw up. You can't sit down and work, or you're ADHD, or whatever. You know what I mean? You got to draw 3 pages a day. There was a thread going on Twitter, and I said, when I got in the business, and I still think it's true, especially if you're working for monthly comics, if you cannot do a page and a half a day, you can't do this for a
You
living.
can't do it. Right. You just can't do it.
You
Mhm.
may still draw stuff, and you may occasionally put out stuff. But if you cannot sit down and do a page and a half a day, minimum, and many guys can do more than that, right? I mean, you're talking about, Batman or Spider-Man or, Marvel or D, or even you got your own image book,
Mhm.
right? If you can't do a page and a half a day, how can your book come out? How can you
Yeah.
make enough money, right? So, like I said, I think it's the personality, and I know now from because we both teach, I know when I meet a person right away, I think they got I think they got that attitude. I think they got that attitude.
You
Not the
check the.
guy that comes out in the beginning of class like, oh yo, and they're like talking their fucking story and everything. Yeah. That's the guy. No. See that guy? That number one bullshit guy? That guy, no, no.
Yeah, we all have that that one student.
Right, right. That's never the person that's there, you know.
Mm. Yeah.
So I think that's what it is. And 15 years from now, there'll be somebody who started now when they're 15, and then they'll be 30, and they'll be like, who knows what the whole thing will be by
Mhm.
then,
Mhm.
right? And the avenues that people have now, they can be completely gone, right?
Mike, you ready? In 15 years from now, that kid's going to say, "Hollow comics will break your heart, kid."
Well, who knows? I mean, when we get to VR and we're plugging our brains into the metaverse or whatever, I don't know. I don't know. But I do know that if you want to do this for a living, you have to be able to sit down and have the kind of personality that allows you to work 10, 12 hours a day
Mm-hmm.
to be able to produce that kind of work, you know?
There's some, and I was going to actually say something about this, but let's just keep it rolling. And Sergeant Dill follows up with goes, so it comes down to discipline, mix the passion for it. Discipline is such a huge part of this, and I'll say this, and that's no cap, as the kids say. Manley's one of the hardest working people I know, and we both know a lot of comic book artists. And other comic book artists go, I don't know how Manley does it. So maybe you're an outlier, Mike, but the general rule, like you said, the minimum threshold is a page and a half a day. That's just for you to
Yeah.
survive.
I mean, I may be a little bit of an outlier, but Blevins works that hard. Ordway works that hard. Anybody who's doing a monthly book, you're not working 5 hours a day. You're not working 8 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I remember they said that Jim Aparo, when he was doing his great run on Detective, would sit down and he would draw pencil and ink and letter, because he lettered his comic. Pencil, ink, and letter a page and a half a day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That guy at the top, it was the top of his game, and Buscema would lay out 5 pages a day. Gil Kane could probably lay out 5 pages a day, right? Because that's what the industry wants now. I mean, you can probably find a way of doing your own comic. Maybe you're not fast enough. Mike Roingo was not a super fast guy. He was a very hardworking guy, but he would take little breaks. He would need a little fill in every once in a while. But he worked all day.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just some guys are a little faster, some guys are a little bit slower. Maybe some guys have a little bit more of a certain amount of detail in their style that takes a little bit longer. Some guy like John Byrne could probably draw a page in 3 years. It's sort of thing, right? Other people, it take them all day.
Yeah.
And they get like half a page done, and then they're like, and they'd have to come back. So, but I mean, again, you just have to be able to sit in the chair to get the job done when you have to get it done.
And we talk a lot about drawing past. I'm saying threshold a lot tonight, but drawing past that level of comfortability is what usually knocks off half of the amateurs or the pretenders.
Easy,
right? It's kind of like, all right, well, there's the drawing board, there's your page, there's your chair. Sit there and do it until it's done. And that could be 3 a.m. You know what I mean? And there's no Netflix breaks and there's none of that. It's like it's done when you finish it.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, this is not a 9 to 5. This is not a
no.
9 to 5 job, This might be the kind of job that, like I said, I think it just has to fit your personality. You make money, maybe doing other things, because maybe your personality is not the kind that can sit in the house and work for 8, 10, 12 hours a day, right? You may not be able to do that. So there may be something, you go work at a game company, and you come and punch the clock at 9 and you leave at 5 and you scratch your itch and you're creative and it's rewarding, and then that works for you. But I think and comics requires so many disciplines, right? So many different disciplines, which is, again, training other things.
Yeah, it's real, and I know that I celebrate you, Mike, as I do every time we do the show. But on my side of the fence, it's the same thing, and this could be my imposter syndrome showing, but there's a lot of times I have to remind myself about what I do and how I get down. You know what I mean? Like, I have a Scholastic graphics deal. My book. And this is going to be the next thing because D. Brad just asked how my thing was going. I'm just finishing up a 272 page full color graphic novel that's coming out this summer, and I got to draw that shit. You know what I'm saying? So it's like it's all time in a chair. It really is. No matter how you slice it.
And
Deep
they
breath.
don't call you every day like, you know,
No.
when you were working in Marvel and DC the old day, they'd be like, "Am I getting pages today? Are you sending out pages today? How many pages are coming? You
Hmm.
said Friday you sent it 3.
Hmm.
Well, you only
Hmm.
sent it 2?
Hmm.
Oh, I need more pages Monday, right? Because it was always a team thing, right?
Right.
Now you have to motivate yourself on a long term
Hmm.
deadline. So you can like joink, but at a certain point you got to be there making it.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's because that's a different kind of rhythm.
Right. And that's all kind of predicated on the forecasting that you've done it before, right? Like, nobody's going to tell you unless you're working with milestones, not the comics, but with kind of like, okay, your deliverables are the beginning of this month. We need to see pencils for 50 pages, and then we need to see in 2 weeks the inks for 50 pages. Which sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, but the schedule is still hard. However, you break up the year, it still has to get done. You know what I mean? So, I think at first blush, when you tell somebody you have a graphic novel coming out every year, that's like a whole year, but it's not really that much time.
A year, right? Yeah, a year is not as much time as people think it is.
When you draw 300 pages, you break that down. It goes back to the math that Mike just said. You know what I'm saying? On top of running your illustration freelance career and all those other things, this stuff still has to get done.
Well,
But
also
yeah,
you're creating from whole cloth,
yeah,
which is also different than say, I want you to draw 300 pages of Batman,
right.
right? You got to invent
The whole,
all those 300, yeah, right?
yeah, and that's something that I've taken on in a different direction on the second book, is that I've never, and this is kind of me kind of growing in my own way. I've never really given the writing part its air. You know what I mean? Like, that's a huge part of this, is just creating this stuff, world building, whatever you want to call it, scripting, laying all this stuff out. It's all coming from just me. So you can look at that as ego, or you can look at it as maniacal. But if I don't do it, it's not getting done. You know what I mean? So you could also look at that as a giant pressure if you wanted to
You
face it
don't
that
just
way.
take the pages out and you like lay them next to the tree in the backyard and hope like little gnomes come out in the night and like, oh, let us help out Jamar.
The Keebler elf comes out and does some breakdowns for me. You
Yeah.
know, but Deep Red, that's a great question. Thanks. Leon Extraordinary comes out August of this year, and you could pre-order it now wherever books are sold: Target, Amazon,
Wherever
Walmart.
books are pre-ordered.
Yeah, yeah. Go cop it. Thanks, bro. Also, Paul Pate. What up, Paul Pate? Paul Pate says, Mike Manley, is there such thing as a Manley sketchbook? Paul Pate, where you been? If so, what's in it? Since your ass is always in the chair. So, are you talking
You go
about you? Go ahead. You go
like
ahead.
a physical sketchbook,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that I
yeah.
print myself,
Yeah, I'm not
or you mean
sure.
like
Yeah,
a
like something you can buy. I don't know where Paul's going with that.
or like this, like a sketchbook?
Hmm. Maybe I
Yeah,
don't know what he's asking. So
I
there's
have
some other.
many. I have
There's some
many
other.
sketchbooks.
And you have Mike has a million sketchbooks, but also you've published a bunch of sketchbooks over the years. Like your last thing, the astronauts and Mermaids book, right? You still have
Right.
that one?
I still have that available. Um, and yeah, in the early 2000s, everybody sort of started doing the Staples kind of, everybody
Mm-hmm.
would putting together their own
Mm-hmm.
sketchbooks. But yeah, I have my own sketchbook, or I have many sketchbooks. If you go to my Instagram, you can usually see
Mm-hmm.
tons of stuff that I've sketched. Lately, I haven't done as much just because I got behind on the deadline because I was sick,
Mm-hmm.
and then I have this other project coming up, so um, that's sort of taking
Mm-hmm.
some time.
There's a couple other questions for me. So, what up, Bill? Bill O'Donnell asks, so for the Leon book, did you do just the line art? You see the way he phrased that, or did you do the colors and letters as well? No. Luckily, part of my deal is that there's a colorist that handles the color chores, and also Scholastic has a letterer for me. But there's a lot in between that. So, there's the writing, there's the conceptualizing of it all. It's the editorial, there's a lot of editorial. There's meetings every couple of weeks. There's kind of running all this stuff. And the biggest thing that I have to think about, and this is new for me, Mike, and this is a really interesting thing to put out into the world, is that I have to think more about the long game of this, and that I'm not just doing a book, I have a series. Right. So usually you have to think about, well, this is what I'm doing this year, and then how does this next book fit into the next book, and the next book fit into the next book. So it's a long line that I'm casting into the water. So the time gets exhausted really quick. And if I had to do all of it, I probably would have a different deal that I have now. But thanks for that question. It's a very interesting. All right, let me show this book. We're already over an hour, Mike, but it seems like we're chugging along now. Mike, how you feeling, bro? All right, so I picked this up. This is a little bit for Christmas. You know Los Bros. Jaime Hernandez put out this book called Queen of the Ring. If any of you are fans of Love and Rockets, there's a heavy dose of female lucha libre in the book, female pro wrestling, and this is almost like a original art book of a lot of studies of female wrestlers from like the 50s and 60s. I think that's the era. There's some fantastic stuff in here. And what I love about these kind of art books, Mike, is that you can even see like the halos in the spot blacks. You can see kind of like how these patching in all of the black ink. There's no bucket fill there. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? I love any type of character studying. I think this is all fantastic. And Mike, are you a Hernandez Brothers fan?
Yeah. Yeah. I have some early issues of Love and Rockets. I
Hmm.
probably stopped buying it,
Yeah.
a zillion years ago. Um, Partially because I don't, I don't actually go to the comic book store anymore. I was thinking about
Yeah.
the other day, it's like the last time I went to the comic store was 2 years ago, Valentine's Day.
Hmm. Oh, you know what? The last time I was at a comic book store is when we were hanging out, and I picked up that Toth hardcover, the Genius Illustrated book. It's over there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't touch ground in a comic book shop these days. It's kind of this. It's not part of the makeup anymore.
No, I mean, there for a long time, it was like we'd go in every Wednesday, and then every other Wednesday, and then maybe a couple of months would go by, and then and there's just like longer and longer and longer. And when I went back to school, I really just stopped going to conventions. I was just because I was too busy
Right.
with school
Yeah.
and everything, And now every once in a while I think about it, but you know, if I go to a shop now, I end up buying stuff that I should just wait until there's a trade. Like I waited until there was a trade for Jonah and the Impossible Monster,
Mm-hmm.
or I got Hawthorne's autobio, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So I just tend now to wait for a trade. I see a lot of stuff online. I see what people are doing. If I see something like, I'll make a sort of a note of it.
Mm-hmm.
Also now with COVID, like you ain't gonna go anywhere anyway. So
Right. Yeah, I think, with the cold water that we just splashed on the room about, just kind of like the throughput that you have to do to be a professional cartoonist. There's a lot of things that get cut out, and also depending on how you self-care. Like, I don't go to the comic book store. I have missed a lot of popular TV shows that people seem surprised, Mike Manley, that I haven't seen. Like, there's only 24 hours in the day, you know what I mean? And you have to wisely pick what works for you. I'm not knocking watching all the Marvel shows or whatever, but that's not part of my makeup during the week these days. That's like a treat if I get to watch that stuff.
yeah, I mean, I think as a professional, you do things differently than the fan, right? Because you're a fan, but you're not a fan in the same way. You know, um, being a professional, um, you're sort of like you're behind the scenes, kind of.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I would do stuff like I'd go to the store, and you buy stuff, and then you'd bring it home and you read it once, and you never read it again.
It's
Right? I have a
real.
whole box, couple of boxes in my studio, just slush pile, I call it, of comics that I bought over the last God knows how many years, where I
Mm-hmm.
would buy it and I read it once, but I never find myself actually going back to the box. I'm not trying to be like negative or whatever, but it's like, it's different when you do it for a living. You have different expectations, you have different standards, um, you know, uh, and I have lot of stuff. So for me to spend money now to buy something, I really feel I need to be getting a little bit more than like 7 minutes reading it, taking a dump. It's got to
Fast.
be, it's got to be more than dump worthy.
All right, we have a couple more questions, and maybe we'll start wrapping it up. But this was cool. I hope that you guys enjoyed just watching Mike and I kick it and answer some good questions. Uh, 9 times out of 10, we're going to have visiting guests on the podcast where the focus is going to be on them. So look at this as a very special time you get to share with us without having to
A special time.
a special time. Uh, my man Shannon asked a very interesting question, Mike, and I don't know if we have time for all of this, but let's see what we can do. So, like I said, Shannon just started a self, I'm sorry, a small press
You
and
almost said
print.
indie. Ha ha.
Did I say indie? No, I was going to say self-publishing, but he's a small press publisher now. And Shannon says, any advice for owning an indie publication? I'm a writer who hires artists. I'm planning to release 3 issues of my floppy and then as a trade this year. I'm going to focus on almost graphic novel paperbacks going forward. Mike, you want to take a stab at that?
Well, I would say my advice would be if you want good art, you're going to have to pay
Yeah.
to get good art.
Mm-hmm.
Do all 3 issues before you release the first issue,
Ding.
right? Because you've got all the art. And if you don't pay, what will happen is you'll get people who will jump in the ring and say, yeah, 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 yeah. And then after the first round, ding, because you're not paying anything, they're going to go do something else. You'll be chasing them.
They'll be late.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that story 1,000 times. Right?
Uh,
And if you can't pay someone, and you also have to be willing to give them some equity in it. If this person is creating the visuals, doing some storytelling, you got to bring him in as a creative partner. Maybe you don't want to give him 50%, Maybe you're giving them 30%. You got to give them something.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not giving somebody something, why do they want to put all the sweat equity into it?
Mm-hmm.
Then you go sell it to Netflix, and they get what? Popcorn?
Mm-hmm.
You know? I mean, I see this happen all the time, all the time. So if you want somebody good, you pay them. If you pay them a good, decent rate, you will get a good, decent artist, and then make sure that you can work out a deal with them. I remember I mentioned this before in the podcast, but my old agent Jean-Marc Lufacier
Shout
had
out to Jean-Marc.
his HollywoodComics.com has a creator contract on there that was still available that you could download and use as a basis to write your own contract
Yeah.
between you and your partner. But that would be my advice. And then do all 3 issues, get them all done, then put it out. Because usually what happens is you get the 1 issue done, then you're really running. The 2nd issue isn't done. The 1st issue is coming out. You're trying to get the beginning of the 3rd issue. It just ends up being too much. Because what you really want to be able to do is you want to be able to give selective free copies to people in the business that will be people that will write a nice blurb for you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got 3 issues of your thing, you can give them a PDF and you can get professionals of note to look at it and give you a plug. It's great to have the 3 issues because, 1 issue just isn't enough today.
Mike, Shannon says all 3 issues are done, bro.
They're all penciled and inked and colored and lettered and everything. That's awesome.
They're done. Mike, I think my thing goes more into Shannon. What's your distribution look like? Like, what's your setup for that? Like, I think it's great that you have a forecast of how you want to package this stuff and then turn it into the next thing. But how are you getting it out into the world? Like, are your books in diamond? If not, are you?
How does it even work now? Because I know that all these deals are so different now. Because you've got Marvel's got their deal, and then the other person got this deal, and the hardest thing is getting retailers to order your comic. So what is your game beyond the retailers? Because most retailers are never going to order your comic if you're an indie guy.
Right. If you're calling up the shop and like, hey, like doing consignment, like that's a quick way to madness. And I did that for 20 years. But yeah, I think one of the things, and I know distribution is starting to chop up because of Diamond breaking down and some of the book publishers taking up some of the mainstream titles. I think you're to really penetrate the comic book market, you're going to have to at least look into getting an account with Diamond to see if you can.
But then they have minimums.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's another thing. I used to be. I can't remember for indie books. I think it was like
2,500, wasn't it?
2,500. It might be 1,000 now. Like you have to get that number, or they'll cancel your book. If you're nice and you bat your eyelashes at them, maybe they'll let you slide, or at least get these 3 issues out. But it's not a slam dunk. And I also know that the website is a good solid way, especially in 2022, to get your brand out there. But I still think you need a mix of comic shop penetration, social media influence, and also maybe you have another thing like Kickstarter to get things out. To be honest, I'm not a fan of people using Kickstarter as a model to make their books, and I'm seeing more of that, Mike. It's like issue 4 is on Kickstarter, and I think I'd be down to buy a issue 1 of something or a trade of something on Kickstarter, but I'm not going to keep going back to the well to support somebody who's kickstarting all of their books that way.
Well, yeah, now people hate Kickstarter because they say that they're part of the blockchain thing.
Oh, jeez.
So you know what I mean? Like there's this, there's always something. I would say that you really have to try to use social media, and you got to put you've got to be willing to put a fair amount of the artwork out there to get people's eyeballs on it,
Yeah.
because there's so much entertainment. It was saying this the other day on a Facebook or Twitter post. You know, people forget. For my generation, we can remember 1977 before Star Wars, and then you can remember after Star Wars.
After Star Wars, yeah.
Right. And like how the landscape of entertainment just radically shifted. And now there's just so much entertainment. It's crazy how much entertainment there is. So it's like, you don't have to watch this. You don't have to look at that. You don't have to. There's like, by the time you like looking at this, some other thing is in your face.
Have you ever gone on a Netflix or Amazon or whatever and saw a show that has 4 seasons in the can and you never heard of the thing before? That's a real thing. There's so much stuff, everything that we're doing is kind of like, I kind of call it snow, right? There's just so much snow always falling.
Well, how are you going to read all the webtoons, right?
Yeah.
How are you going to follow the web comics, all the regular comics, all the Netflix shows, all the Amazon shows, all the Hulu shows? I mean,
That's your job, is watching television.
I mean, even if you're David Van Cooley, the guy was on Fresh Air, the entertainment guy on Fresh Air. There's no way you could watch everything.
Yeah. So so starting a comic book company, it sounds right now that Shannon has opportunities that we never had, especially like in my case when I started, and even Mike, when you started doing Action Planet in the 90s, the landscape was different than it is now.
The landscape was actually in free fall.
Right.
Because you went from all the different Friendly Franks and all these other Capital City and all these other distributors were just falling off. And like between issue 1 and issue 3, the numbers dropped drastically, sometimes because a lot of the accounts that ordered books, the first book, were gone by the time the second book came out. And there was no real internet thing or any, you were running ads in Diamond, calling people on the phone, and basically you got 2 type of retailers: the people that order Wolverine, and then maybe 10% of the comic shops would order Love and Rockets. That might be your people.
Right.
The guy who just ordered Wolverine and Marvel, never going to order your book. You could give a shit less.
Right.
He could care less about that book. That's not his thing.
Right. There should be more Quimby's comics in Chicago, but there's not enough of those.
There still isn't much now.
Yeah.
So just have to persevere, and I think try to use social media as much as possible, get your stuff out there, get people seeing it. You got to give a lot of stuff away, unfortunately, but I mean, I don't see any other way to get people to, if you give like, here's 3 pages.
Mike, how do you feel about Comixology or creating like an e-version of your?
I know a lot of people are doing that. I've never done that. I don't really know what that all entails. I might be involved in something like that, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's you might have somebody that does something on Comixology that does great, and then you hear other people like make no money. It's just like
right. They got nothing. They got nothing.
Right? Yeah. So
I
don't know.
I'll give a shout out to my man Amani Latif, who runs Peep Game Comics, who is a POC digital comic book platform. So Shannon, if you don't know Amani, you should check him out, and you can do like e-versions of your book on his platform. I was looking at Comixology, just as a aside. I think you got to have comic book people reading your stuff. I think the website thing is great. We also have websites. We also have a store. We also do that, and you should be doing that thing on Instagram too. But I still think you need to hit the comic shops too. All right, cool. Thanks. Our buddy Trey. What up, Trey? Trey's the dude. Trey says, honestly, my main goal right now is to be consistent with sketching. I honestly think having a sketch buddy would help a ton in this regard, like a accountability partner, Mike. It's quarantine and most of my friends don't draw. Is there an easier way to just creating an art entourage or something? So, Mike, Trey is looking for a community, and also it sounds like a little bit of an accountability buddy to keep the mojo going with his art. You have any suggestions about that?
Not really. I mean, other than maybe putting that out on social media, maybe putting that
Hmm.
on Twitter. Do people want to? What is it? What's the streaming thing? Um,
What's that, Mike?
the gaming stream thing.
Oh, Twitch.
Set up a Twitch,
It's not a bad idea.
and because I think other people do that draw live,
Hmm.
get together at Twitch,
Yeah.
Or Zoom.
Hmm. Hmm.
Set up a Zoom, set up a Twitch. Um, you know, the my experience is that either people really do it because they're compulsive, like me.
Hmm.
Um, that's still such a rare bird of people that are compulsive.
Yeah.
Um,
Like you have to draw, not like
yeah,
do you feel like drawing? Those are two totally
yeah,
different
yeah.
things.
I would just draw no matter what,
Hmm.
right? And I really enjoy drawing, and I enjoy all aspects of drawing. Um, as far as like learning and challenging and forcing myself to grow and study and all that. So I would say that try that and see if you can get it. Every group that I've ever had, just be prepared for there to be a fall off. Maybe if it gets successful, it gets big enough, you'll have enough. It can fall off. You can other people jump in.
Hmm. I'm a big fan of community. I'm a big fan of networking. And I also say, and Trey, I think I've said this to you in the past. I think you also have to look at what you have already, right? I think we all get really caught up in trying to find the magic pencil, right, Mike? Or the magic something, or I got this comic book person's phone number at a con, and now this is my portal into the business.
No one can.
That's your magic pencil. Um, but at the same time, like look at the communities that you're already in. You're a member in good standing of pencil to pencil, right? Or a coffee break with JN, and just already connecting with other people and moving around other creatives who are facing the same direction. Nurture those relationships, you know. You could even in the chat say, "Hey guys, I'm thinking about doing an anthology. Anybody interested?" And I bet you somebody would raise their hand and say, "Tell me about the details." You create your own gravy. I'm a testament to that. It's just like there's really no magic portal, like I said, to make stuff work. You have to just look at what's in front of you and figure out a way to get in it. So, think about that. And good luck. This has been fun, Mike. But yeah, we're going to start wrapping up unless anybody has any last minute questions. Mike, oh, did you have any other things to share? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You got one more for us?
Let's see. Well, I have other stuff, but it probably would not be of interest to people in the podcast. So, um, I guess not. No,
Okay.
not right now.
No, not right now. Well, before we wrap up, we'll do a couple more minutes. I want to kind of talk about the programming for the rest of this quarter, I guess. So Mike and I have a couple of irons in the fire as far as guests are concerned. But our calendar's a little empty right now. So we're looking at rebuilding that. Like Mike said, we've reached out to a lot of people. Sometimes you don't get answers. So, we try to bring you guys dope content. But in the interim of all that, I think it would be good for all of you guys to think about watching our archives. There's so many dope interviews we've done over the past 2 years that we've been. This is how long we've been doing this, Mike. Almost 2 years now. right? Just luminaries in the business, some people you may not have heard of who now you're their favorite fans. Just because you missed the live doesn't mean that this all disintegrates. Go back and watch the Brian Lee O'Malley one. Oh, Mike, I just read that they're going to do a Scott Pilgrim series on Netflix,
Animated or live action?
animated. So I need to talk to Brian about that. That's fantastic. Like it's all right there, you guys. Don't, don't act like it's not. But from that, there's all these great notes that you can take. Every one of our guests comes to the table with a different way that they got into their business and have made themselves successful. I hope you take notes if you're at that point in your career where you need to you're still figuring stuff out. It's like the answer. It's like the cheat sheets right in front of you. You just have to look at it. It's all right there. Every week, well, we're coming back to it. Every week we come here and give you that good talk and answer a lot of questions. So if you're still on
The good
fence,
talk, not
the
the
good
bad.
talk, not the bad talk. So, if you're still having issues about motivation and getting things done, this is a great motivator. I know a lot of people, Mike, who would watch Pencil to Pencil, and this would be the time that they draw while this show's on. They find that little period of time. And I guess I'll say this: if you are in the middle of a bunch of other things in your life, you got a shorty who's in your face all the time, or you got to take care of your parents, or you got to go work at the gas station or whatever, and you're just like, I just want to find some time to draw. Find the time to draw. You got to make the time, and if you've got to sneak it in little increments. Do that. That's the only way you're going to move forward. You got to put your pencil to the paper, y'all. Mike, you got any last words for him? Any motivation?
Uh, hmm. You just do it.
I like it.
Don't have any excuses like the Nike thing.
Very
Just
Nike.
do it. It
Just
all
do
adds
it.
up.
Yeah.
It all adds up.
Mhm.
Again, you can't. One thing I do know now, you can do this as a hobby and enjoy it as a hobby and enjoy the the process. But if you want to try to approach it as a professional, you have to have a different attitude and a different demeanor, and that's really what separates the amateur and the professional. Um, Sketching doesn't have to be special. You don't have to have special pens and special pencils and special sketchbooks. It can just be a ream of copy paper from the office, or it's time in. It's time in, exercising your imagination. Some people have to look at stuff to draw. Some people draw right out of their head. I don't think any of that really matters. I think it's just doing it, and it's sort of like there's a martial arts aspect to it, right?
Mhm.
If you do it and you do it and you do it and you do it, then it's actually easier to get into doing it, right? If you put all
Mhm.
these things in front of it, you're right, all these conditions and all this other stuff, this is like, oh, by the time you get to it, you might actually be not even
Mhm.
motivated,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
So I just sit there and draw. And again, you can draw for pleasure. Sometimes you're going to draw things you don't like.
Could draw for pain.
Draw, you might erase that head 50 times, but then the 51st time you'll get something.
Mhm.
Really
Mhm.
just time in. It's like playing music. How many times do you have to practice that piece before you can play it? Some people it's 5, some people it's 300. It's different for everybody, you know.
Mhm.
Um, but if you really want to be able to play the piece, you have to give it what you need to give it, right? I
Mhm.
think people are always trying to like, well, if I did X amount of this, would that mean that? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And art isn't like that. Art isn't like that. Music isn't like that. Any sort of creative thing really isn't like that. But I will say that if you sit down and you do it every day, every chance that you get, if you could only draw an hour a day, after 30 days, you did 30 hours, you did over a day's worth of drawing in a month,
Mm-hmm.
And in a year, you did, almost 2 weeks worth of drawing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, I say just do it, find a
Mm-hmm.
way of doing it, find your time. And you have to sort of make it a priority. That's the other
Mm-hmm.
thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. You have to block that time off for
You have to
that.
make it a
Yeah.
priority for you to be able to do it. It's just like, again, my brother's a musician. He's a music teacher too. And you got the kid who comes in every week. Did you practice?
I'm laughing already.
No,
Nah.
no.
But he
And,
came to class. Isn't that count?
well, like some kids come because they want to come, but they're not
Mm-hmm.
too immature or
Yeah.
whatever. Or sometimes they come because mom wanted them to play the piano or play the guitar.
Or needed to get out the house on a Saturday
Right,
afternoon.
yeah. Mom and daddy need mom and daddy time, so you're going over to Mr. Manley's house to play guitar.
Fishtailing out of the parking lot.
Yeah, right. Yeah, here's $5. See you tomorrow, kid. So you got to block. You got to block time for
Yeah.
it. It has to become a priority. You cannot get good at anything if it is not a priority.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless your priority is watching Marvel Cinematic Universe shows. That's your priority.
Right? Which is fine if that's what you're into.
Sure. Sure. But comics ain't going to make themselves, you guys. So we're going to wrap it up, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We almost did 2 hours, Mike. I love it.
Wow.
Yeah, we know how
Time
to
flies.
talk. I know. And thank you guys for just being open with us and just sharing and asking good questions. I think we got some good questions in, and we also hopefully you got a good answer. Um, but
And if you didn't, it's not our fault.
no. But we will be back if the maker's willing next Wednesday at 8 p.m. EST. You shouldn't have to ask. We have the same bat time, same bat channel when we go live. Wednesdays at 8 p.m. EST. Put in your calendar. One of the greatest things you can do is, and I've really been pushing the YouTube, Mike. We're on a super slow march to 1,000 subs. I think we're at what,
1,000 submarine sandwiches.
Multi-grain bread. I think we're somewhere near like 570 or something like that, 670, something like that. We're somewhere in the middle. Subscribe to the channel, set the alert. So I put up what I call a signpost a couple of days before Wednesday with our guest, and you can put a star next to that. Like it, tell your friends, watch the archives, bump up our hours on YouTube so we can monetize this at some point, right? Because
we can buy John.
We can buy all the joints once we hit 1,000. So help us help you by subscribing to the YouTube.
Help us help you. Help us get a John.
That's right. So thank you guys so much. Thanks a lot, EJB, D. Brad. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We do this for you. We're teachers first. And we hope you were educated or entertained at least. So you know what to do, you guys. We haven't done it in a while, Mike. We'll see you next week. And don't forget to wash those curvy hands. Oh, so good. Look at that. We'll see you next time. Be safe.
Bye.